Hello, everyone. My name is Bojan Simoski, and I'm a PhD researcher at the Social AI group at the Vrije University of Amsterdam. Today, I'm going to present you the joint work of me and my colleague Michel Klein on the effectiveness of an mHealth coaching program on predictors of work absenteeism. With a really nicer name, today we're going to present the work on reducing sick leave with digital health interventions. So what is exactly work absenteeism? In a simple language, it is sick leave. And sick leave is, of course, a big individual and societal burden. From one side, it costs billions of euros and work productivity loss for a lot of companies and institutions around the world. But also from the individual perspective, it involves feeling lack of well-being, because we're talking about a wide array of both physical and mental health disorders that an individual can have. On a societal level, besides having big loss in terms of money and unhealthy citizens, all of this contributes to less happy societies and less happy individuals. Therefore, digital health interventions or health interventions that use certain technology in their implementation can be very beneficial to be implemented in the workplace. And this is where individuals, enterprises, and society all come together into making this work. Today, we're interested to present you the results of our study, in which we have investigated the effects that a digital health intervention can have on work absenteeism predictors. We based this data analysis on the dataset obtained from the Vitality platform, which is just an anonymized industry name from our industrial partner. What is important to know is that this is a workplace-initiated mHealth intervention in which 550 participants were from 10 different companies were invited to join a 6-month intervention where each employee can have coach, a professional coach that guides this person through a certain lifestyle change. So we're talking about either physical activity, but also we're talking about mental activities like getting less stress, so doing meditation, yoga. It's a wide array of lifestyle changes that are possible by using this mHealth app. So this app was available on both Android and iPhone. And once again, important to understand that the employees were participating in the intervention for a 6-month period. The program participation during this 6 months time frame, as we can see, was followed by a big dropout. It's important to understand that we divide the participants in two groups. Group A are the participants that started the intervention right away, while Group B participants have started the intervention with a delay of 3 months. In these 3 time points that are presented in this plot, that the participants were filling health checks. This is a long list of questionnaire points, out of which we extract the predictors of work absenteeism, as we will see in the later slides. But what is important to know now is that a lot of these participants actually didn't fill in all the 3 questionnaires in these 3 time points, which reduced our data sample size. So we have finally in the 3rd time point, we ended up with 93 participants from Group A and 32 participants from Group B, which are actually used, whose data is used to conduct the analysis that is presented in the remainder of the slides. So the first I would say, research question that we try to address is to look into the changes in the absenteeism predictor scores as a result of a 6 months intervention participation. Based on this questionnaire, health checks that were conducted in these 3 time points, we have defined 8 predictors of sick leave, which I'll present to you next. First, we have the work ability, which is a continuous variable between 0 and 50. We see that at the first time point, the participants have an average of 41.16 for the workability score. Here we are discussing the results of both group A and B together. Second predictor is the burnout. The burnout scale gets values between 0 and 6, where 0 means very good, which means no burnout, and 6 means very bad. So these are people with high risk of burnout values. And the average one here is 1.79. Then we follow with the need for recovery with an average of 41.7. Physical activity minutes per week. We see that the participants have reported an average of 243.7 minutes of physical activity per week. And the last continuous variable is the vigorous physical activity minutes per week with an average of 224.9. The last 3 scores, 3 predictors of sick leave, are categorical variables. First one is about depression symptoms that the participants show, a scale between 0 and 6, and we see that most of the participants, 43%, they show no symptoms of depression. We move to the second last predictor, which is the perceived health. So how do the participants perceive their health? This is a scale between 1 and 5, and you can see the percentages yourself. For example, most of them answered 4, which means that they perceive their health with a good score. The last predictor are the days per week with 30 minutes of physical activity. And of course, here the values are between 0 to 7 days. It's a pretty, let's say, equal distribution in terms of the means of this value. Participants have mostly done 4, 5, or 6 days per week of at least 30 minutes of physical activity. Now I would like to present the results. So what are the intervention effects on these predictors that we have just introduced? What we have done is we have subtract the values of the predictor scores at the end minus the start of the intervention. And we have performed statistical significant tests on these changes of values of the predictor scores. Fortunately, all the predictor scores show positive trends. For example, workability has an increase of 1.64. The burnout lowers after the participation. We have 0.38 lower risk of a burnout. So this is a value between 0 and 5. The need for recovery is also lower, and for both group and B is statistically significant value of 12.4. We have reported 16.5 more minutes of physical activity per week and 22.7 more minutes of vigorous activity per week. So from all of these effects, all of these values that we present, we have statistical significance in the workability score for both group A and B, the burnout score for group A, and as I already mentioned, the need for recovery for both group A and B. For the categorical variables that we have introduced, the perceived health score has shown statistical significant change for group B participants only. The reported results here are summed for group A and B. For example, 64% of the participants have no change in the perceived health score, but 90% of the participants have increased their value by 1. On the other hand, 8% have reported lower number of perceived health by 1. The depressive symptoms, 50% of them see no change after the program participation, so they have remained with their depressive symptoms from before the intervention. 27% have scored 1 less on the depression symptom scale, which is good because the scale is reversed, which means lowering the scale number means less depressive symptoms. On the other hand, 6% of the participants have reported increase in their depression scale. Finally, regarding the days of physical activity with 30 minutes of activity, 30% of the participants report no change, 12% exercised 1 day more, 9% 2 days more, and 10% have exercised 1 or 2 days less. Here, talking about statistical significance, as I already mentioned, we have group B regarding the perceived health, and we have group A, which shows statistical significant effects for the depression score. After presenting the first research question results, I would like to move to the second part of our research question, which investigates the relationship between certain app usage scores of the mobile app that was developed for this intervention and the sick leave predictor scores. So as I said, the participants have used this Vitality platform app for a period of 6 months, which means that a lot of data has been collected on coach-coachee communication, but also on the performance of their physical and mental activities. We have defined certain scores of app usage of these participants that are related to the diet communication, so coach-coachee communication, and some information about the frequency of their activities. For example, we have looked into the number of messages that are exchanged between the coach and the coachee, which on average is 155. The number of conversation, both audio and video calls, on average 43 calls per team. The average call duration, which is 28 minutes. The ratio of done activities, for 58% of the planned activities were actually done. Then we look also into the number of done activities. So this is not a ratio, it's a pure number. We have on average 66 activities, lifestyle activities that were performed by the participants. And the number of liked activities is 54. We have performed Pearson Correlation in order to investigate the relationships between these defined app usage scores and the absenteeism scores. We report these results separately for both Group A and Group B. So let's see what this correlation matrix shows for Group A participants. On the x-axis, we see the predictors of sick leave scores, while on the y-axis, we see the app usage scores. And we can shortly discuss the statistical significant correlations here. They are mostly low correlation scores, low to moderate in terms of the values. The highest one is the correlation between the need for recovery and the number of calls. We have 0.49. Physical activity per week and number of calls. There is also a positive correlation between these two variables of 0.30. The workability index is positively correlated to the number of liked activities, 0.24, and the perceived health with the number of messages. For Group B participants, we see two statistically significant correlations. One is between the burnout scale and the number of messages. This is negative correlation, which means that lowering the burnout is related to higher number of messages exchanged between the coach and the coachee, and a positive correlation between the increase of depressive symptoms and the ratio of done activities. So it seems like doing more activities made people slightly more depressed, which is something that we don't like to see, but this is the data. So these were the second outcomes of our study. And I would like to finalize this talk by just mentioning what we have presented. So here in this presentation, we have looked into the outcomes of an mHealth-based coaching program and the effects of this program on the absenteeism predictor scores. Luckily, we see positive trends at all predictor scores, and also some of them are statistically significant. And finally, we saw few moderately strong and significant correlations between app usage scores and the sick leave predictor scores. With this, I would like to end my presentation. And of course, I'm open to questions from your side. Thank you very much for your attention.